All right, let's make some pasta noodles. So in the bowl, I have the 1 cup all-purpose flour, 5 tablespoons semolina flour. Set those out onto your work surface, which can be a big plate or a bowl, or your counter, which is what I like to do. Make sure you mix those two flours together pretty well before you get started, just to ensure that they're pretty well mixed up. I'll take my 1 egg and 3 tablespoons of water in a measuring cup or a small bowl, get those mixed up pretty well, and then get to mixing. One thing that's nice about this recipe is that if you mess it up the first time, it's relatively cheap, so just throw it in the trash and start over. Not a big deal. Also, if you don't have one of those, I'm not even sure what they're called, dough knife or whatever, it's a really handy tool. They're pretty cheap too, so you should consider getting one to keep in your kitchen. They're pretty versatile. So what happened here is I did not double check my recipe before I started, and was positive that it was 1 tablespoon of water. So I only started out with 1 tablespoon of water, which left everything really, really dry and not enough moisture to complete the dough. So there, I'm not sure how much I added. I think it was just shy of a tablespoon. So always reference your recipes, even when you think you know what you're doing. And this process, see, there's some more water. So I think I ended up adding a little over 3 tablespoons of water, but I would rather add a little bit than have too much. And the process of getting this dough together probably takes about 10 minutes or so. It's not too bad. And noodle dough does tend to be a little bit on the dry side. If it's too wet, it won't really hold its shape. So, and if you have to start adding flour to it to try and dry it out, that's a rough place to be. Good luck. Oh, potty mouth. So here I'm feeling like it's still a little bit dry, so I just get my hands wet, work the dough a little bit longer to get a little bit more moisture into it. A lot of this video is sped up just because I wanted to leave it all in there so that you have a realistic idea how long it takes, but I don't want to sit through full speed, like 10 minutes of it. So, and here again, I added a little bit more water just by getting my hands wet. And I still feel like this dough ended up a little bit on the dry side, and I probably should have worked it a little bit longer and added a little bit more moisture, but I was worried about overdoing it, so I didn't. And then once you feel like you got your dough in a good spot, you're gonna wanna rest it for 20 minutes, but you don't want it drying out. So either cover it with plastic wrap, which is what I do, or just in a small bowl with a moist towel over the top of it while it rests for 20 minutes. All right, now onto the KitchenAid. So this is a very, very versatile tool for your kitchen. The amount of different attachments makes life a lot easier. So basically you can see there I cut the dough into 2 pieces. The piece that I'm not working with, I wrapped it back up in the plastic wrap so that it's not drying out. Now you're going to just kind of flatten this out, get some flour on it, and start at the widest setting on your pasta roller. back to the KitchenAid, this pasta roller setup, I have a grinder set up for it. I use this machine a lot, and it's very, very helpful. So if you're considering getting one, I say go for it. You can still make this without the pasta roller. You just have to, it's just a lot more manual labor. You can use a rolling pin and get it all flattened out. There's a ton of videos on how to do that as well, but that's not how I'm going to do it because I'm lazy. So the first few times that you pass it through, you want to make sure and fold it over. And when you're folding it over, you're kind of shooting for the width of the pasta roller or close to it. That helps you get a real consistent length of pasta at the end, or pasta sheet. Now I have a little bit dry dough, and I have the KitchenAid set too high. So it's, oh, good job, Brad. So that was me slowing it down. So it was ripping the dough. If it's ripping the dough, just slow everything down. So once you fold 3 or 4 times and it looks like a pretty good piece, you can start adjusting the thickness, just one setting at a time. Why you gotta drop stuff, Brad? Run it through each setting a couple of times, and then when I get to number 3, I run it all the way through once, then I run it partway through, shut it down. I don't necessarily recommend that you do this your first try, because if you mess it up and wreck the dough, then you're going to be starting over from the very beginning. But if you do this, just move really slow. Make sure the speed is slow. It does save a lot of time and makes it a lot easier if you get this down. Once you get a good flow going, you can adjust the speed up a little bit. I just make sure as you're doing it, you can still see the 2 pieces that you put together. So at each setting, I make sure that it runs through 2 full revolutions. And I stop at setting 6 on this machine, which is, it only goes up to 7. So, and trial and error, as you make it, you'll decide what thickness you prefer and go with that. It's also important to make sure you got plenty of flour around, especially if your dough is a little bit on the wet side. It will stick together, so don't be afraid of the flour. When you go to start this back up, this piece on the top here, make sure that it is not sticking to the equipment because it'll just rip it right off. Make sure to get flour on both sides. And then you can cut these. I cut these to, I don't even know why I do the length that I do. It seems manageable once it's cooked. It's not too long, it's not too short. So I guess that's probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 inches, somewhere in that range. And then again, I just make sure that both sides have a good amount of flour on them so that they won't stick together while I'm finishing the rest of the dough. So that's it for making your sheets. You'll just do the same thing with the other half of the dough. And then we'll switch to our pasta cutter head and cut it into pasta. So this setup came with a spaghetti one and this one. I haven't even tried the spaghetti one, just because I really enjoy this style of noodle more than spaghetti. So I just always make this. It does a good job of holding on to whatever sauce you're putting on it. Nice ratio of noodle to sauce. And in this step 2, you want to make sure there's plenty of flour going on. So this is what I do. I just take an apparently old cookie sheet and I get all of the little things of noodles on there, put it in the freezer. Once it's frozen, I just pull them out, put them in a Ziploc bag, and throw them back in the freezer. Makes it easy. There's always noodles available. And you don't have to freeze them first. You can go straight to cooking them from this point if you want. All right, so there's already some salt in that water, and I'm going to add some oil. Now, is adding oil a crucial step? I have no idea. I don't think it does anything wrong, and maybe it does something good. So theoretically, it puts a little oil on the noodles, which I'm all right with that. So I'm going to taste it. The reason that you salt the water is to add salt to your noodles. You basically want it to taste like seawater. And if you're unsure, just don't add too much salt. But you definitely want to get some flavor added to the noodles. So I throw them all in. I do 2 minutes and then pull it, strain it, and cool it so that it doesn't cook any further. And then I'll reheat it for when it's time to eat. And that's pretty much it. This is a nice, simple recipe that I try to always have them in the freezer. So anytime we need noodles, they're ready to go. Look at that, yummy.